South Africa has opened a new chapter. Yesterday, President Cyril Ramaphosa took his oath of office, and that, of course, before Chief Justice Raymond Zondo at the Union Buildings in Pretoria. And this marks the start of the 7th administration. Now, speaking after his inauguration, President Ramaphosa said that South Africa has entered unchartered waters. Now, it's all eyes again looking to see what the president will do when he finally unveils his multi-party government in the coming days. So to reflect on the country's earlier years of democracy, we're now joined in studio by Contralesa Secretary-General and praise singer Zolani Mkiva, and joining us virtually is former Parliamentary Journalist and Editor Cloete, just to take us, through where we've been, where we find ourselves right now in this moment. Kim, Zolani, thanks so much to both of you for joining us this morning. So let me just start with your reflections, perhaps starting with you, Kim. As someone who was there in the early years of our transition to this democracy, what are your reflections on how far we've come and, of course, the moment that we find ourselves in?
Wow, well, it's certainly a historic moment and really so much kind of to unravel over the last 30 years. But I think that we're really at a pivotal time. It's a really exciting time for the country. I mean, a lot of flux, a lot of challenges ahead. But looking back, I mean, we did it in 1994. It was a pivotal time for the country. I look back and it was just an incredible moment, really. And from then on, there was so much to learn. So much was new. Everything was kind of unfolding in those early years. So, there's challenges, but I think that we're a capable, resilient nation. And I think looking back, we managed to make a huge impact, and we have made big strides despite, insurmounting challenges and obviously big problems, along the way. But I think that, we're in for a good ride, I think, in the future.
Indeed, it seems interesting. Zolani, your perspective so far?
Well, thank you very much, Sakina, for having us. Let me start off by congratulating the President on his inauguration on behalf of Contralesa as well as the rural communities whom we represent. Well, for me, 1994 was a moment wherein all South Africans were very united, a moment of excitement, and it was a period wherein people were looking forward to a new dispensation indeed, where we wouldn't have any racial laws, where all of us will be regarded as citizens at the same level, equal before the law and before the eyes of the Lord. So it has been a beautiful journey from a sense that we all now have equal opportunities as a nation, and many things which were considered a privilege during the apartheid era became rights during the democratic dispensation. Everyone had a right to education, everyone had a right to primary health care, and all our cultures were brought into the fore. Our languages were recognized for the first time in the national discourse. So it's been a wonderful journey from that perspective. And the last 30 years has been both beautiful, but when you get beauty, in the same context, you also get some ugliness, because politics became pretty much poisoned and polluted to the extent that as we speak now, there's a lot of political toxicity. And I think with the speech of the president yesterday, where he is making a clarion call for us as South Africans to unite and ensure that the social cohesion is again put at the center of the agenda of the nation, I think it's something that is pretty good. The fact that we have NEFSAS, which affords an opportunity even to the poorest of the poor to go to university. For the children, for the first time in history, are able to study engineering, mining, environment, oceans economy. It's something that has never happened before. We only knew that the highest that you can get is to become a lawyer or a doctor or a teacher or a policeman. But people now have an opportunity to become even scientists, rocket scientists, everything. So we can't take that for granted. And South Africa is positioned, better than any other African country where we are right now. We have a better managed economy. We have got these grants which are given to the poorest of the poor. We can't take it for granted. Everyone is entitled to pension in South Africa. When you reach a particular age, 55 or 60, you have that access. When you go to Africa, even people who have served in the state, sometimes they don't get anything like that. Even a president of a country in Africa is not entitled to any pension. So I think that we are in a privileged position, and our democracy and our freedom has given us something that I think we ought to appreciate. And the little things that are negative, I think those are things that we can deal with them, especially the issue of unity. I think we must, as Contralesa, make a clarion call to the politicians to unite our people, to serve and service our people. This is what they expect. This is an aspiration that comes from the toiling masses of our people. Nothing else. They must never be about themselves. The nation comes first. A political formation should be secondary. So let's serve and service our people in that context. People come first. It is not leadership that comes first.
And so many things that you said there that I would have loved to get into, but unfortunately we can only choose a few, Kim. But, you know, to both of you, as people who were there, Kim, the role of the media, the role of journalists and editors in making sure we capture those moments, it is our responsibility to tell the story as it unfolds to the nation and further afield, of course, as well. But you were there at those very critical moments. You know, one thinks of, we're talking about the government of national unity now. We had a government of national unity in 1994. There was, of course, the adoption and the signing of the Constitution. You were there, Kim. And we look at all of those moments and talk to us about the significance of having captured that and having that guide us through the years into where we find ourselves now 30 years later.
Well, the first thing I can say, it was an absolute privilege. I think during that time, you know, journalists were kind of in uncharted waters, really. We were coming to a new dispensation. There was a new constitution. You know, Nelson Mandela had been released. There were so many years leading up to that 1994 election. You know, the political violence. There was so much going on before that I think journalists felt they had a real responsibility to tell the story and to tell it truthfully and to tell it, you know, right sort of through the different historic moments. And I think the whole way that, you know, that we were kind of evolving, especially as the sort of political and parliamentary kind of group, as new laws were being made, you know, as South Africa was getting sort of bigger on the global stage. I mean, I remember those early years where suddenly, after being kind of in the darkness, really, you know, we were kind of erupted on the global stage. Trevor Manuel was out there, you know, and Nelson Mandela, you know, Thabo Mbeki in the era after that. It really became we became quite a leader and a voice. And I think that the media reflected that, both in South Africa, both in Parliament, both in the political sphere, you know, and internationally as well. And I think locally, you know, so there was so much new legislation that was going on as well, that journalists were trying to unpick and you know, and work out kind of where to go, public hearings, just things were completely different. But to me, the main thing is that it was a huge privilege and responsibility to be able to kind of show, you know, history unfolding in those early years. And I think journalists have remained a very tight group since then. I think that those early years really set the foundation for a strong media in South Africa. And I can say that I think I'm very proud to be a journalist and to have been part of those early years and to have sort of set those great foundations to be able to kind of carry into the future. And there's been trouble over the years. We've obviously had to report on some really heavy stories, certainly corruption and crime and unemployment, you know, that has come over the last 30 years that has been really, really hard, tough challenges. But I think being able to tell that story from the very beginning has been really important and has stood us in good stead.
As I come to Zolani with the next question, let me start it off with you again, Kim. In terms of how things were changing in Parliament, now suddenly you have a Nelson Mandela, and here comes Zolani Mkiva as the praise singer. And this is something that Parliament had never seen. Talk to us about that, please.
Oh, that was just incredible. It was like bone chilling, actually. It was so incredible being part of that. Just to see, you know, from Parliament having been this very strict, you know, tricameral, you know, Parliament, very dry, very obviously, you know, very pale and white, suddenly became this incredible gathering of people. And I just remember that moment when Nelson Mandela kind of, well, when he was on the podium and he got the praise singer, just got everybody on their feet. And it went on for ages. The applause just went on forever. It was the most incredible moment. So, you know, there was that. I mean, there was previously when, you know, in every aspect when Nelson Mandela was in Parliament or anywhere near, you know, the cleaners would come up, people would come out from their offices. He would be so warm and welcoming, and it just changed the whole atmosphere of that Parliament. It felt like he'd kind of just broken the shackles of the really old sort of like, you know, apartheid Parliament, and it breathed fresh light into it. It was really an incredible time.
And of course, you were part of breaking those shackles, Zolani.
Yeah.
So
lucky.
that moment of you being given the opportunity to be the one who's going to be the praise singer to Nelson Mandela, of all people. How did that come about? And talk to us about how you felt.
Well, it's inexplicable because I had an opportunity of a lifetime to be the first one to actually recite on the occasion of the first democratic inauguration of a new South Africa. So I couldn't sleep. I was a student in Cape Town. I was doing my final year. And it was to be my first time to actually fly on an aircraft from Cape Town to Johannesburg. So it was, I couldn't sleep. But I was well prepared and I was looking forward. And it is a moment which I still cherish to this day, because nothing like that, to be given a golden opportunity to sing the praises of a man who is not only loved by your own people, but is loved by humanity at large. And I was being given this opportunity to introduce him before he takes it to the podium. And I told myself that I must really make a mark. And the mark that we have made since then has now become part and parcel of the culture and the decorum of the state. Because if the president is inaugurated, that inauguration is incomplete without a traditional poet, as well as the opening of Parliament and SONA. I did all the formative stages in 1994. On the 10th of May, the inauguration, the first opening of Parliament, the adoption of the new constitution on the 8th of May, 1996. So these are things that I still want, when I have time, to even write a book about, because
you have
in 1994, you will not believe this, I was even given an opportunity to say, you can go to Parliament and grow as a member of Parliament, because what you do, you represent the voice of the voiceless and employing one of the ancient traditions. So you would make a very good public office bearer from that perspective. But because I loved so much what I was doing at that point, I was still very excited to be going across the length and the breadth of South Africa, introducing Nelson Mandela. And what else can you ask for?
What an opportunity. And you know, as Kim was saying it, you know, just breaking those shackles. And I felt the chills now, Kim, you know, just thinking back at those moments and how things were unfolding. But of course, the reality is 30 years later, people are asking, have we lived up to that 94 moment and what we had anticipated would happen, the things that we thought, we hoped our lives would become. So have we lived up to it, Kim?
Wow, you know, we have huge challenges. I think right at the very beginning, we were so on the back foot. I mean, you know, you just think about all the basic services that people didn't have, and that, you know, that they had to really start from scratch, electricity, housing, jobs. It really was a massive challenge. And I do think that we started off extremely well. I think that, everything looked very positive, even though we had, a lot to carry. But I do think we've had challenges along the way. And I think President Ramaphosa really said that yesterday. He did say that there's so much inequality. We obviously have huge problems with unemployment. It's so high. And I think the last, the years before the Zuma presidency also, we had a lot of challenges about corruption during that era. And I think we still have to really work hard. All the institutions, every single South African, and now the Government of National Unity has this tremendous opportunity to try and work together and get us to a better place. Something that I think Nelson Mandela would be really proud of if he could be here and see that we have now got a Government of National Unity and we do have this new opportunity. I think that it's a pivotal moment. I think it really could set us up for the future. Although we do have these massive challenges. As Zolani said, we've got there's certain things that we do have. We've got grants is incredible. I mean, it really is one of the biggest services ever. But that's all, it's not enough to take people out of poverty. So those things are our biggest challenges. And I think the media has a really important role to play to make sure that we all work together in this and, for a better future. Indeed.
So Zolani, our time is up, but do you still remember the exact phrase that you sang for Madiba? And if you will, please feel free to end this interview for us on that note, please.
Well, I would say that I did mention that we do not have, there is no tomorrow without a yesterday. There is either no tonight without a yesternight. The bones of our ancestors are vibrating. The waves of our oceans are reverberating, propagating gogabilities, the possibilities of flexibilities. Nelson Mandela is the stem of our society. He is the filament of freedom. He is the calyx of consciousness. He is the corolla of people's cause. He is the anther of amicable solutions. He is the pistil of peace. Allah Allah Madiba, Allah Allah, Allah South Africa, Allah Allah.
Guys, no better way to end that. Kim Cloete, a former parliamentary journalist and editor, and Zolani Mkiva, praise singer and Contralesa Secretary-General, reflecting on the early years of democracy. Wow, you guys just took me right back. And this is the feel-good moments that we need to keep us on track as a nation, to keep hope alive.